Hi, I'm Ashley Reed, professor of English at Virginia Tech. Lewis Carroll was born Charles Lutwidge Dodgson on January 27, 1832 in Cheshire, England, one of 11 children of a country curate. The family lived in near seclusion until little Charles reached his teens, and he showed early literary potential, producing a family magazine, writing puppet plays, and performing in amateur theatricals. When he began his formal schooling at age 12, he rose to the top of his classes, taking prizes at Richmond School and then Rugby, before entering Christ Church, Oxford in 1851. After graduation, he was offered a lifelong teaching position at Christ Church and became a lecturer in mathematics. This was a role that required him to remain unmarried for as long as he held it. Alongside treatises in the fields of linear algebra and geometry, he began publishing poems, word games, and puzzles in magazines ranging from Punch to Aunt Judy's magazine. He took up his pseudonym Lewis Carroll in 1856. He had a keen and a quick intellect and broad-ranging interests. He joined the Society for Psychical Research, which was an academic club devoted to the early study of psychology. He devised mathematical strategies for improving the fairness of elections. He produced scores of inventions for the improvement of everyday life, including two that would be of interest to college students today: a stand for reading books sideways while lying in bed, and something he called a nyctograph, which was a device for taking notes under the bedclothes in a darkened room. Beyond these and his accomplishments as an author, he is best known for his work as a photographer. He immersed himself in this new technology as soon as it appeared in England in the 1850s, and he became one of the most accomplished photographers in the country. Indeed, Lewis Carroll's first encounter with the little girl who would become Alice in Wonderland was a photographic one. He stopped near her home on the Oxford campus, where her father, Henry Little, was a dean, to photograph Christ Church Cathedral, and he encountered Alice and her sisters Lorena and Edith playing in their garden. Though they wouldn't sit still long enough to have their pictures taken, they befriended Carroll and allowed him to take part in their games. He became a frequent visitor to the Little household, playing with the children in the nursery, telling them stories, and taking them rowing on the nearby river. It was during one of these rowing parties in July 1862 that Carroll invented, entirely from his own limitless imagination, the story of Alice's adventures in Wonderland. In addition to the main character, Alice, the other little sisters and Carroll himself appear in the tale, with Carroll as the stammering dodo, Lorena as the Lory, Edith as the eaglet, and another member of the boating party, the Reverend Charles Duckworth, as the duck. The little children were captivated by the story's ludicrous characters, including the White Rabbit, the Cheshire Cat, the Mad Hatter and March Hare, the Caterpillar, and the King and Queen of Hearts. By its topsy-turvy situations, as when Alice grows so large she fills a house and must stick her arm and foot out of the windows, and by its riddles, puns, and ridiculous poems. When it was published by Macmillan Press, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland immediately found an eager audience beyond its original listeners. After the first edition appeared in England in 1865, the book was quickly translated into French, German, and Swedish. In 1871, Carroll published the sequel, Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There, after which translated editions of both books made their way to Russia and Japan. And in 1890, Carroll published The Nursery Alice, which was an edition of the books intended for children under 6. The popularity of the Alice books can be traced not only to their artistic merits, but to Carroll's innovations in the genre of children's literature. According to scholar Morton N. Cohen, the Alice books, quote, revolutionized writing for children. Children's books after Carroll grew less serious, more entertaining, and sounded less like sermons and more like the voices of friends than earlier prototypes, end quote. In fact, one of the delights of Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass is how Carroll pokes fun at the pieties of children's education in the 19th century. Poems like How Doth the Little Crocodile and The Lobster Quadrille parody the religious hymns and didactic poems that Victorian children were required to memorize and recite. Children and adults the world over adored this new strain of writing for children. And in 1892, Carroll was able to report in a letter to Alice Liddell that, quote, "Your adventures have had a marvelous success. I have now sold well over 100,000 copies." As for Alice Liddell herself, she led a life appropriate to an upper-class educated Englishwoman, but one that could never quite match the magic of Wonderland. After being briefly courted by Queen Victoria's son, Prince Leopold, she married Reginald Hargreaves in September 1880. They lived happily, with Alice overseeing social events at their country home, serving as president of a local women's institute, and raising 3 sons, 2 of whom were tragically killed in the First World War. Reginald died in 1926, and in 1932, Alice made a trip to New York with her remaining son, Carroll, to receive an honorary degree from Columbia University in recognition of her importance to English literary history. While there, she gave a radio address in which she declared that, quote, "America and New York are such exciting places to visit that it takes me back to Wonderland," end quote. We have Alice to thank for Alice's adventures in Wonderland and through the Looking Glass, not only because she inspired Carroll's ingenious storytelling, but because by her own admission, she pestered him to write down the story of her adventures underground, quote, going on at him until he started to write them all out, end quote. Alice in Wonderland's popularity only grew after Carroll's death in 1896. It was spurred by stage and screen versions of the story, including the earliest film adaptation in 1903, a 1933 stage play starring Olivia de Havilland, who would go on to star in Gone with the Wind, the Walt Disney Studios animated production in 1951, and more recently, Tim Burton's 2010 blockbuster. Other adaptations include plays, operas, ballets, rock albums, and comic books, and the songs, sculptures, poems, and paintings that have been inspired by Alice are simply innumerable. Cohen claims that of all English language texts after Shakespeare and the Bible, the Alice books are the most frequently quoted around the world. Lewis Carroll's Alice captured the imaginations of people around the globe, and they continue to enchant us today. Thank you.